On today's episode of the podcast, we are talking all about stretching and if that does play an important role in building muscle, and if so, when should you do it? What should you do? How long should you do it for? And all of that good stuff. So how important is the whole stretching process in terms of what you do in the gym? Should you be prioritizing it a little bit more? Because let's be honest, step a little bit closer, my friend, step a little bit closer. You're doing fuck all right now, aren't you? I know your game. I know your game. You're doing fuck all in terms of stretching. You kind of think, well, it's that boring thing that you start off with your fitness program and you say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to spend half an hour fucking stretching at every single end of every single workout. I'm going to fucking stretch. Gets to the end of the workout, you think, fuck it, hell, I'm too fucking tired. Balls to that stretching shit. And then you move on. Or you could be the opposite. You could be that person that spends an hour stretching before you even touch a fucking weight. You spend that time just like stretching out every tiny little muscle that you've got just in case it might work while you're actually doing that particular workout. They're two extremes. Now, should you exist on one end of that spectrum or somewhere in the middle? Or is this whole stretching thing just something you can throw out the window and say, fuck it, you know what, it's not that important. Who gives a fuck about stretching anyway? It's boring and it's for the yoga generation. Anyway, but having said that, I do actually wish I did yoga, but I don't. But anyway, now, stretching and mobility is important. Let's kind of get that straight in there from the get-go, is that this stuff is important. It's not something that you should just cast to one side and just think, this is not important. I'm not going to do this. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to get me massive guns or real peachy pert glutes. It's not going to get me the results I want. So therefore, I'm just going to fucking just ditch it. Used in the right way, at the right time, it can improve your training and it can improve your recovery. And it can also improve your health and how well your body functions as you progress later in life. Because as soon as you get to being a little bit of an old bastard like me, then you kind of really wish that you did spend some time doing some stretching, doing some mobility work earlier in your training career before you became this sort of immobile, semi-decrepit fucking mess that you end up when you hit sort of, 40-ish and then go from there. But there we go. I digress. I'm still working on it. Now, personally, even having said that, I don't really stretch that much and I don't stretch as much as I should. Yes, I'm not perfect. Sometimes it is a case of do as I say, not as I do. So I'm being fully transparent here. I should train, do more mobility, stretching and all that sort of stuff way more than I actually do. So really do listen to what I'm saying rather than say, okay, try and stalk me and follow exactly what I do. Probably it might not be as beneficial for where you want to be as you progress through your training career. Anyway, having said all of that though, personally, I wouldn't do that much stretching before training. And again here, we're talking about people who want to build muscle. So whether your goal is to not necessarily going to step on stage. You don't want to be massive when it comes to building muscle, but to be leaner, to be healthier, to be more quote unquote toned, to have a little bit of muscle definition, you are going to have some muscle. And therefore, the process of building that muscle is exactly the same as if you wanted to get massive. The difference between where you want to get to and massive is genetics, years, and maybe a few drugs. So they're the things that are going to kind of factor into it. You are not going to get absolutely jacked in a year. You're not going to get absolutely jacked fucking overnight either. So really get that out of your head that, training hard when it comes to weight training is going to turn you into something you don't want to be. Trust me, you will fucking see it coming. It's not like you are going to transform overnight into this massively huge bodybuilding-like physique that you really didn't want. You're not going to wake up and go, fucking hell, where did all this muscle come from? Not going to happen. You will see it coming. You say, actually, right now I'm at the physique I like. I'm just going to drop into a maintenance level of training. Perfectly fine. So let's get that right. So we're going to approach our training as if we want to build muscle. that's how we want to approach it. If your goal is completely different, you don't want to build muscle, your goal is completely different, then this isn't for you. Your stretching routine, your mobility routine might be completely different to this. I'm talking to a certain group of individuals. So don't get your knickers in a knot and say, Simon, but stretching and mobility is so much more important for what I do. Great, that's cool for what you do. I'm talking about a very specific thing here. Now, arguably for me, when it comes to building muscle, before you train, stretching could potentially be working against you from the point of view that lots and lots of stretching is really, you're creating this almost like relaxation in the muscles. You're creating this environment where you're kind of stretching things out, you're making things a little bit more relaxed, which is kind of the opposite to what you want to try and achieve. You're trying to achieve more tension. You're trying to achieve more sort of activation within those muscles. So arguably stretching, or at least lots of stretching before you start training, could be working against you. So if you really want to focus on building muscle, then you're going to be thinking about more activations. You're thinking about creating tension and contractions. So you might want to do some stretching in the form of taking a muscle through its complete range of motion. So if you're doing some upper body work, you might actually do some stretching in the form of really kind of protracting your shoulders forward. So you're really kind of moving your scapula, your shoulder blades are kind of going through all of those different articulations. So you may be doing some protraction, you're doing some retraction, you're doing some depression as well. So therefore you're taking it through all these different ranges, and in certain points you'll be taking it through a little bit of a stretch as well, but it's there with a purpose. At the end of that range of motion, you're creating a contraction, you're creating some sort of activation of the muscle at the same time. It's not just this process of stretching out the muscles and creating this relaxation at all times. That's not the only thing that you're doing. So as I said before, it's not necessarily about kind of just arbitrarily just stretching everything before you start. It's doing it with a purpose. And usually for me, if the goal is building muscle, the stretch comes with it some form of activation, and the two are linked together. It's not just this process of, well, I'm going to touch my toes 25 times and hold it for 30 seconds. If that's not really going to be advantageous to what's coming next. So if you're focusing more on those activations, taking those muscles through to their end ranges under control and contracting them, that's really going to be the main focus. And if that has a stretching element to it, then great. Now, when it comes to stretching and mobility, personally, I would like to see that done outside of the environment of training to build muscle, training to really kind of what you're doing to really effectively work those muscles. And when you do it outside of your training, effectively you can start to work through that range of motion. So for example, if your squat is quite shallow right now and you want to get a deeper squat, working on your mobility, working on stretching, working on your flexibility can help with that range of motion. Likewise with any other exercise, like with your bench press, if the bar can't touch your chest because you've got poor mobility there, or your shoulders are really have a poor mobility, working on that is definitely not a bad thing. Whether you do that with some stretching routines, some mobility work, a little bit of both, is probably going to be advantageous, both for your actual lifting. So the greater range of motion you can use, the better you're probably, in terms of the amount of muscle you're going to build, probably better you're going to find that. Also from joint health, general movement, mobility, health, well-being, all of these things make up what fitness should be about. It's not just about building as much muscle as possible and looking like you've got ripped abs and a great physique. That's one element of it. You've got to look at things like joint health, overall movement, mobility, and some stretching, some mobility work in and around that is probably a good idea for most people. But use it for me at the appropriate times and the right time with the right intention for what you're doing. So if you want to also add in there all of that stuff into your fitness regimen, if you want to call it like that, overall, then by all means do that. But as a specific tool, straight before you train, specifically to build muscle, personally, I don't think that an extensive stretching routine is probably the ideal thing to do. Use it as more of a tool to assist in developing range of motion, in developing your joint health, your overall movement, and your overall health and well-being. Absolutely. And if you want to do it as part of a recovery process, do that as well. Cool, do that. Add in some foam rolling if you want to do that, or some sports massage. Again, that's going to aid recovery and really going to help along that process as well. So that's all I wanted to go through on stretching. A quick, brief run through of what I think is important when it comes to stretching and what maybe you want to think about before and after your next training session. So I hope you found this useful. If you did, as usual, come over to Instagram, drop me a message to say hi at iron_paradise_fitness. Tell me you listen to the show. Maybe you've got a question that I can turn into a podcast episode of its own. Feel free to ask me that as well. Also, if you want to find out more about Iron Paradise Fitness, head over to ironparadisefitness.com. I'll put a link somewhere in the notes for you to go and visit. Get yourself some fat loss articles down your neck, some articles on how to build muscle, and also grab yourself a free Lean Life Kickstarter pack as well with a free training program, guide on how to count calories, and all of that jazz. But until then, all I will say is thanks for listening to the show, and I will see you from the next one. Keep living the lean life, and I'll see you soon.